Right now on Upfront.
Wisconsin warning.
You want your government fighting against fraud.
A big potential change to Wisconsin's multi-billion-dollar long-term care program, and the company at the center of it all now under fire in New York.
I think it's fair to say the process was tumultuous at best.
This Sunday, the new lawsuit in New York, the review now underway in Wisconsin, and the major concerns intensifying. New York State Senator James Skoufis is here.
End of an era.
No, it's tough. I mean, I was up till late at night to see the trade.
The Bucks trade Giannis to Miami, and the World Cup excitement set to explode on U.S. soil. Former Bucks executive and the New York World Cup host committee chair Alex Lasry is here with it all.
And battle for the first. One of four Democrats running to unseat Congressman Brian Stile on why he's the best to take him on.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. New concerns here in Wisconsin this weekend surrounding a proposed change to a multi-billion-dollar Medicaid program known as IRIS. It's Wisconsin's long-term care program.
Earlier this year, the Department of Health Services announced it planned to switch to a single company to administer the program. But that change is now under review, and the company the state selected was just sued in New York.
Just yesterday, we announced a Department of Justice lawsuit.
Vice President J.D. Vance in New York on the Justice Department lawsuit filed last week against public partnerships in the New York State Health Department. Accusations of Medicaid fraud, accusing New York of failing to police the company that oversees the state's home health care program. Public Partnerships is the same company the Wisconsin Department of Health Services said in January it plans to select to administer Wisconsin's multi-billion-dollar long-term care program called IRIS. With more than 29,000 participants across Wisconsin, the program's projected to cost more than $1.5 billion this year alone through state and federal Medicaid dollars. The program is a lifeline to Wisconsinites who need it, allowing elderly people and those with physical or developmental disabilities to essentially direct and manage their own care. Everything from in-home assistance to caregivers and transportation.
People with disabilities are incredibly scared. They rely on these waiver services to stay in the community.
Jason Gloser is the executive director of the Coalition of Independent Living Centers.
I could see a situation where we see some administrative improvements based on this move. But based on what we've seen in other states, I can't say the same for the way the services will roll out to consumers.
The Wisconsin DHS announced in January it would switch from multiple companies to administer money and handle paperwork to one, Public Partnerships, the company under fire and facing a lawsuit in New York. But now Wisconsin is reviewing its decision after several official protests were filed. In those documents obtained by Upfront through an open records request, other competing companies say the change introduces unacceptable risk to participants, workers, and the state. The documents taking direct aim, accusations of real-world consequences experienced in other states following consolidation under public partnerships, including payroll disruptions, workforce instability, data exposure, and service interruptions. DHS declined to comment on the process, but on its website says the state anticipates better customer service, including faster vendor and response times. And in a statement, Public Partnership says it rejects the claims in the lawsuit unequivocally that rests on inaccurate allegations. The company wouldn't comment directly on the Wisconsin contract, but touted its 25 years of experience in 18 states nationwide and says the company maintains high satisfaction rates and enforcement.
And with that, James Skoufis is a Democrat state senator in New York who has raised concerns about public partnerships. He joins us now. Senator, welcome back to Upfront.
Thanks for having me.
So you held a hearing about a year ago focused on this company, Public Partnerships. What do you make of this DOJ lawsuit?
It's startling. I have mixed feelings. Certainly on one hand, as someone who has been raising concerns about PPL and our state's Department of Health and how this bid and this award came together for $9 billion here in my state, I'm not surprised with many of the allegations in the lawsuit. On the other hand, and by the way, this is a civil lawsuit we're talking about. There are no criminal charges, at least yet, that have been levied. On the other hand, I and many of my colleagues do have grave concerns about whether Donald Trump's Department of Justice can be impartial as they move forward and prosecute this lawsuit. And so we're in the early days. The lawsuit just dropped last week, and we're going to see how this proceeds in the coming weeks and months.
The New York Health Department has called this lawsuit baseless. Is it?
Yeah, I am not prepared to take that sort of knee-jerk response. Again, I've been, and many of my colleagues, by the way, Democrats and Republicans, have raised serious concerns about PPL and in particular the bidding, albeit the transition itself was a disaster for months after the award was granted to PPL. So it's, yes, the bidding that is my major concern, but the transition was a major mess. And so, I'm not prepared to say it's baseless because I've raised many of these concerns.
Senator, I want to ask you what you just mentioned on public partnerships has told us that the company has never lost a contract because of poor performance. I'm curious what you're seeing in your state, that transition you just referenced, and what are your biggest concerns in New York right now?
There were tens of thousands of enrollees. We call it the CDPAP program, the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program. And it has grown exponentially over the years to 250,000 people in this program. But the matter of fact is tens of thousands of them never actually even made it over to PPL during the transition because they ran into so many problems. They were months and months late with moving the balance of the individuals over to the program. There were thousands of caregivers who weren't getting paid during the early and middle parts of this transition. It was a full-blown disaster. And putting, sort of the cherry on top of this mess was PPL was gaslighting lawmakers like myself. They were outright lying. In fact, at my hearing about a year ago, they lied under oath. And then they followed up with a letter to try and clean up their lie with another lie, it turns out, based on some of the emails that have come to light from the DOJ lawsuit. So Wisconsin is right to take a pause here and review everything before moving forward. As a New Yorker, I'm in no place to tell Wisconsin, what they should or should not be doing at the end of the day, but they should proceed with caution.
You mentioned the bidding and the transition as your main concerns with public partnerships. Is there anything that the company is doing well?
Well, look, the transition is long over. And I will say, after we got past that very tumultuous many-month period, operationally, things have calmed down. Things have been much, much smoother. When someone calls their helpline, they're not waiting for hours like they were in those early days. People are getting paid. The caregivers are getting their checks. And so operationally, things have significantly improved. There's no question, but there was a lot of damage and a lot of collateral damage in those early months. And certainly as someone who cares about integrity in government, I remain very concerned about how this award was procured, how this bid was decided upon in the first place.
Yeah, Wisconsin is also considering the same switch. What is your message to state officials here?
Look, consolidating these middlemen, we had 600 of them here in New York before moving to a single so-called fiscal intermediary. And so that type of conversation, I think, is important on behalf of taxpayers to be undertaking. But these are people's lives who depend on these types of programs that we're talking about. And so it's important that any state moves judiciously, cautiously, intelligently, with integrity. And I sure hope that Wisconsin learns from some of the mistakes that occurred here in New York.
Senator, quickly before you go, I want to ask you about your primary results in your state this past week. The last time we talked on this program, you were running for DNC chair. As a Democrat in New York, what would you tell Wisconsinites about the fact Democratic Socialists won really across the board in New York this past week?
Yeah, it was an interesting night earlier this week. And I'll say Wisconsin's not New York, first of all. No state is like one another. New York is uniquely interesting as it relates to our politics and especially especially our Democratic politics. But the matter of fact is, there's a pendulum in our political system. And when the other guys are in the White House, Donald Trump now is in the White House, of course, the pendulum swings back the other way. Here in New York, that swing has been quite aggressive and quite sharp.
Yeah, here in Wisconsin, Francesca Hong is running as a Democratic socialist for governor. Is this a wider moment among Democrats?
Look, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, they're certainly having a moment. There's no question about it. They are speaking to an element of our base. And keep in mind, in these primaries, we have 5%, 10%, 15% voter turnout among the Democratic Party. And so the vast majority of folks are not weighing in our party in these primaries. But they're speaking to a base that feels as though the Democratic Party has ignored them. And that is something writ large Democratic Party should be learning from and should be taking a lesson from. We have to do better.
James Skoufis, a Democratic state senator from New York. Senator, thank you for your time again. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
In the Democratic primary, Missy Hughes dropped out of the race this past week. She endorsed Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez and encouraged other candidates to drop out as well, as 6 now remain ahead of the August primary and our debate July 28th.
Up next, Giannis out, the World Cup heating up. Former Bucks executive and the head of New York's World Cup host committee, Alex Lazary, with us next. There has to be an economic impact, potentially, though, when a city like Milwaukee loses a superstar like Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, certainly look at Deer District, look at Pfizer Forum. It's kind of like the house that Giannis built.
It's the end of an era, the Bucks trading Giannis Antetokounmpo to Miami in a long-anticipated move. This as World Cup fever intensifies across the U.S. The United States' next game, Wednesday.
To talk about it all, let's bring in Alex Lazary, a former Bucks executive and currently chair of the World Cup New York, New Jersey host committee. Hey, Alex, busy time for you. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Thank you.
Let's first quickly start with Giannis. You and your family were on the business side of this for many years. Should anyone here in Wisconsin be surprised by this trade that happened this past week?
Look, I think anytime you trade the franchise player who led us to a championship, first one in 50 years, and has kind of been the face of Wisconsin sports, it's always going to be a surprise and a shock. But I think the organization and Giannis, made the decision that this was in the best interest of both sides, and rooting for a quick rebuild for the Bucks, and hopefully Giannis is able to have an incredible kind of rest of the career, and hopefully, look, this isn't the end of Giannis in Milwaukee.
Alex, have you by chance had the chance to speak with Giannis since the trade?
I haven't spoken to him directly, so can't speak to only can see what he's kind of commented on some social media and everything. But this is kind of the first time that he's had an off season without Eurobasket or anything like that. So hopefully he's going to be well rested. And look, I'm always going to root for Giannis, and so hopefully he has a really great season, except for when he's playing the Bucks.
All right, Alex, let's talk World Cup. You've been out there for a year plus preparing for this moment. In New York, New Jersey, what is the atmosphere like right now?
It's been electric. The World Cup fever is kind of hitting everywhere. We've had 4 games in New York, New Jersey. I went to Seattle to watch Team USA. Had about 10 friends from Milwaukee all come. So Milwaukee invaded in Seattle. Probably took all the beer sales there if they were up. And it's been insane. The atmosphere and excitement has just been something like I've never really been a part of.
I was going to say the worldwide impact here in New York. With that, have you run into folks from Wisconsin? Is Wisconsin represented in the fan base? I was
on the bus from Port Authority to MetLife Stadium, and I was sitting next to a couple German fans. And someone on the bus walked on with a Packers hat on, and I yelled, "Go Packers!" And he kind of gave me a little fist bump. And then the guy next to me was like, "Oh, I'm from Wauwatosa." And I introduced myself, and he was like, "Oh, the Bucks guy." And so I was like, "Yeah, now the World Cup guy." So it's been great seeing people from all over the world and all over the country, right? And just kind of course, happened to just be sitting on the Port Authority bus next to a Wauwatosa family.
Of course.
Always the Wisconsin connection. There are reports that hotels in New York City are at 90% capacity. You mentioned the fans that are traveling all across the country for some of these games. What is the impact of the World Cup nationwide?
So I think you're looking at over, FIFA's projected over $40 billion of economic impact to the United States just as a result of the World Cup. But I think, more importantly, I think there's a couple things that we really want to see. We want this World Cup to do what the Dream Team did for basketball around the world in '92. Hopefully this World Cup inspires the next generation of athletes to go play soccer and to help deliver that U.S. soccer World Cup championship that we've been longing for. And then, hopefully this also shows that if you want to have the greatest sports and entertainment event in the world, you're going to do it right here in the United States. It's been 30 years since we've hosted a World Cup. We're entering a sports decade now with the World Cup, the Olympics. We've got a rugby championship, a women's World Cup, a Winter Olympics. This is our time to show that if you're going to try to put on the greatest sports and entertainment events, you're going to do it right here in the U.S.
All right, we'll get you on your way to prepare for more games, including the finals there in New York. The CEO of the host committee for New York, New Jersey, Alex Lazary. Hey, Alex, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up, battle for the first congressional. The Democrat looking to unseat Brian Style is here. Lorenzo Santos is standing by next.
Welcome back. 4 Democrats will be on the ballot this August, fighting to replace Republican Congressman Brian Style in the first congressional. Democrats nationally are targeting both Style and Congressman Derek Van Orden in the third. Style won the district back in 2024 by 10 points.
Lorenzo Santos is one of the Democrats in the race, and he joins us now. Welcome to Up Front.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start right there. Brian Style winning this race by 10 points 2 years ago. He beat Peter Barca, a candidate who you backed in that race. How do Democrats flip this race and flip the seat?
Well, Democrats need to keep the main thing. We need to make sure that we are prioritizing the voters in the first district. I mean, Brian Style and Donald Trump, they lied to American voters about what they would do. They lied about the Epstein files. They have not released the full Epstein files. That should be one of the most bipartisan things that we should be seeing happen. It hasn't. They lied about the economy. Donald Trump said he would improve the economy. He's hurt the economy.
Before November, there's first a Democratic primary in August. You entered the race at end of February. Right. How much have you raised? How's fundraising going?
Here's the thing about money. The most important thing is we are building a grassroots movement. I mean, if money was the main thing, we would have a Governor Michaels and we would have a Senator Hovde. My main thing is making sure that I am talking to voters of the first district. Brian Style has had the opportunity to do that. He hides behind these telephone town halls and really no one knows that he's doing it. He needs to show up for the first district of Wisconsin. He has been missing in action, and that's part of the problem, and I'm going to be the person that is going to show up and make sure I'm listening to the constituents, Republican, Democrat, or otherwise.
Among the 4 Democrats, what makes you the best Democrat, then, to take on Brian Style?
Well, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm out of the district. I'm listening to everybody, Republican or Democrat. At the end of the day, we need to have someone who's going to stand up for Wisconsinites, who understands what we're going through, who's going to fight for us. And frankly, I think we're going to have a Democratic president in 2028, but I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican in the White House. If anyone goes against the interests of the first district, they will hear from me.
The DCCC has listed the first congressional district as one of their top priority districts. Yeah. How much do you think that national Democrats will actually get involved in this race and assist in this race?
Well, look, I'm focused on making sure that my campaign is building the strongest coalition and making sure that we are meeting voters where they are. The DNC will hop on board. They're going to see that we're the strongest campaign. They're going to see that we have the strongest coalition, and they will back us. It's just a matter of making sure that we are more focused on making sure that we are working with voters and that we are interfacing with voters. I'm not concerned with trying to get the DNC on board. I'm not concerned with trying to make sure that I'm getting the top endorsements in the state. The most important thing right now is to make sure that I'm fighting for the district of the first district of Wisconsin. I'm fighting for my constituents. That's what Brian Style's not doing.
And looking specifically with the DCCC, have you had any early conversations with them at all?
Yeah, I've had conversations with the DCCC. I've spoken to them, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is the campaign that we're running here. All politics is local. They're not here. They're in Washington. I understand my district, and that's what's most important right now.
You're a Navy veteran. You ran 2 years ago in this seat, then you got out and backed Peter Barca. What makes you ready for Congress?
Well, look, all of those experiences collectively make me ready. And the biggest thing is making sure that you show up. That's the main thing. I've talked to voters of the district. I understand what they're going through. You know, everyone's struggling right now. Everyone's anxious because they feel that they have a representative right now in Brian Stile. You know, if Brian Stile grew a backbone on the issues and at least stood up for this district, I'd drop out of this race right now. But he's not going to do that. He's had the opportunity to do that. He's missing in action. My job is to make sure that the voters of the 1st District of Wisconsin have an advocate and someone who's going to fight for them, and that's why I'm in this race.
Lorenzo Sanchez, the Democratic U.S. congressional candidate, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you swinging by.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Now, we've also talked with Mitchell Berman and Peter Bergelis. You can watch those interviews right now on the 12 News YouTube page under the Upfront playlist.
Up next, a look ahead. Next Sunday, as America celebrates its 250th birthday, we'll bring you inside the birthplace of the Republican Party right here in Wisconsin. The history, why Wisconsin, and why the Little White Schoolhouse may now need to regain its national landmark status. It's all next Sunday right here.
Looking forward to that. For now, that is our show today. All of our interviews are posted on the WISN 12 YouTube page. Just find and subscribe to the Upfront playlist.
Thank you for your time today. We will see you right back here next Sunday for Upfront.